What's up, everybody? It's time to do another video. Actually, it's way past time to do another video. I have been thinking about how I needed to do a video week after week after week, and it just hasn't gotten done for a lot of different reasons. The main reason is because there's just been so much going on in the garden. As the summer has come, everything's being harvested, pruning, fertilizing, watering, and constantly picking stuff from the garden. I've also been doing some canning and preserving inside. And so with all of that going on, and then family responsibilities and work responsibilities at my church, it just hasn't been time to do a video. I even have taken some video footage, and with the hopes and the intentions of editing it and making a video to show you, and even when I start on it, it just doesn't get done. So I just decided it was time to just do a rough cut video and just come out and take a tour of the garden and show you what's going on. So that's what we're going to do today. So many things have been growing and doing so well in the heat of the summer, including these sweet potatoes, and it's been a daily battle. Japanese beetles have been trying to eat my sweet potatoes, and I'll just come in every day, and a couple times a day I just pick them all off of the sweet potatoes and throw them in a big pot of soapy water to get rid of them. They're also doing the same thing on my peanuts, but we're not going to let that beat us, and I think we have managed it well enough, and I haven't seen any Japanese beetles on them, so I think we might be at the end of the season, fingers crossed, or else at least I'm at the end of some kind of a life cycle and we won't see them for a little while. Here we have lima beans growing mixed with sweet potatoes. I also had some sugar baby bush watermelons. They've been okay. They're small, which is what they're supposed to be, but we haven't really gotten one that was, some of them were not ripe, some of them were ripe, but just didn't really, I mean, they were sweet, but they didn't really have a whole lot of watermelon taste. So I have a few more still growing, and I have one inside waiting to be cut open. But the lima beans are doing really well. As you can see here, we got good lima beans coming in. And I'm just gonna, my plan is just to let these stay out here. I'm not even gonna pick them. I'm just gonna let them dry on the plant and harvest them all at once after they have dried out. And then I will shuck them and keep them over the winter and eat on them throughout the cold months. Here on my arch trellis, we have red ripper field peas growing in 5-gallon buckets. I have 4 plants in each bucket, and they are growing up the arch trellis, which is the plan. It's going to be kind of nice to see this entire thing covered in red ripper peas. So excited about that. It seems to be working well. Today I went back in. Originally I had, I don't know if you can see that, but I had originally put plastic zip ties to hold this together, which is working just fine. But I went back and added metal zip ties. I had some extra metal zip ties from another project I was working on. And the reason that I replaced the plastic zip ties with the metal zip tie is because after these things finish growing and they're all spent and all picked, then I'm just gonna set them on fire and burn up the dried out vines. That's how I'll get rid of them. And then I think what I'm gonna do is put plastic over this arch trellis and make a simple greenhouse so that I'll have something to use for starting seedlings, maybe growing some things during colder months. So that'll be an interesting thing. My Cherokee purple tomatoes have done wonderfully. We've been picking them constantly. I get several of those every day. My little tomato cages are not the best in the world, but they were free. I made them for free out of material I had on hand. The main problem that I'm having with them is that they want to get top heavy and sort of tip over. So I've been putting little sticks on them like this to kind of prop them up. It especially happens during a rainstorm, which, by the way, we just had a nice thunderstorm. Zucchini and squash, got plenty of zucchini and squash already, but they're also getting they've gotten vine borers on them pretty badly, which has caused a lot of dying. But the interesting thing about the zucchini and the squash, the thing that has saved them, I planted them in this pot. The vine borers get in the vine here and they go inside and they bore through the vine, which would kill the plant. Except God is great, and He engineers plants and animals to survive. So these plants grow out, and wherever they touch the ground, wherever the vine touches the ground, it makes a new root system. So even though this part of the plant is dead, it has moved to here, and so now it can continue to grow. Squash plant doing the same thing. I just planted some more Irish potatoes in these hay bales. We already have thyme and oregano and basil growing in these hay bales, and this is a bell pepper plant, sweet bell pepper plant. But now I also have Yukon Gold Irish potatoes growing in there. So we're going to see if we can't get a fall harvest off of that to go with our wonderful spring harvest we already have. This cucumber plant has given us a lot of cucumbers already, and it's looking pretty bad, isn't it? But I think it is about toast. So we're going to pull this out today, and I'm going to replace it with some beets. I'm going to plant some beets in there. There's a few straggling cucumbers that are still on here, but they're kind of puny, and I think we're about done. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that. And that'll be okay, because I have some other cucumber plants growing. That's a lemon cucumber, and this is a lemon cucumber plant as well. Interestingly, they make a round yellow cucumber, which is why they call them lemon cucumbers. Do you see all the flowers that are on that plant? So I don't know, I've already gotten a couple of cucumbers off of it, but all of those flowers potentially could turn into cucumbers. And you see how many yellow flowers are there? So my hope is that when I tear out the other cucumber plant, we'll start getting a lot of these little cucumbers coming along. And they taste pretty good. They taste just like a cucumber. There's an odd shape and an odd color. More sweet potatoes growing here in some 10 or 15 gallon buckets. This white tomato plant creates white tomato, and it tastes okay, but it's really hard to tell when the tomato is ripe. And I'm getting hornworms in them, see? And this plant is just sprawled all over, and I can't eat. There's so many tomatoes on it, I can't even tell if they're ripe, and they're all down inside the plant, and they're not, they're not just like to die for or anything. So I think I'm just going to rip this plant out and get rid of it, because it is shading out these peanuts. I had some extra peanuts left over, so I planted them in this spot where formerly I had some onions growing, and so I really want to give those onions more sun, so I'm going to get rid of that tomato plant probably today. Have 5 okra plants growing in 5-gallon buckets, and these are supposed to be a really high yielding okra plant. It's called jambalaya, and we've been getting a few okra off of it every now and then. You see there's one right there that's growing, and it's starting to it's getting lots and lots of little okra buds on it. And my understanding is that when they get kicked into high gear, you're going to have more okra than you know what to do with, which will be good because we need more than what we've been getting. But I think it's going to pick up. More tomato plants, another squash plant that was getting eaten up by vine borers, but it's growing and traveling just like the other one. This one's traveling in 2 directions. More tomatoes. We've been getting tons of tomatoes and peppers, and so we're doing pretty good with that. Over here, more lima beans. I really like growing in this hay bale setup. It's not something that I think I would want to do an entire garden with, but I think every year I probably would do 2 or 3 of these hay bale planters. They work really well for growing watermelons, and you can put beans and all kinds of things in the outside, and it works really good. And then once it's all done and it's over, you got a really good load of compost. So cantaloupes, I had several cantaloupes came off of the plants, and they were okay. They were called Honey Crisps, and they were okay. They weren't to die for. I probably wouldn't do them again. The other problem I had with the cantaloupes was some kind of a rodent was getting into them. I think it was either a raccoon or a rat. So I would be waiting for the melons to be ready to pick, and then I'd come out thinking I was going to pick them, and they'd be busted open and all the insides was eaten out of it, and there would be seeds all laying around all over the place. So I think it was either a raccoon or a rat that was getting a hold of them. Over here is my main bed of peanuts, and they are doing wonderful. They're just really flourishing and doing well. And I was telling you about the Japanese beetles. Every day I'd come out here and pull about 30 or 40 Japanese beetles off of this bed, and I'd throw them in that bucket of water there to kill them. And just as I was saying that we're about done with the Japanese beetles, there is one right there. You see it? That thing right there is the aggravatingest thing in the world. See what they do to the leaves? They just eat those leaves up, and you'll get so many on there. They're terrible. So I just pick them off like that. They don't bite or anything. They feel kind of creepy, but once you have picked off 30 or 40 of them, you don't care anymore. And I just pick them off, drop them in there, and that's the best way I know to get rid of them. You could use some kind of a pesticide like 7 Dust, but the problem with 7 Dust is it kills the bad bugs and the good bugs too, and I don't want to kill the good bugs if I can help it. And when I say good bugs, that includes bees, and bees are important because they pollinate the flowers, which creates the fruit. If we don't have bees, we don't have fruits and vegetables. So I don't really want to kill bees if I can at all help it. Over here is where I had a bunch of watermelon and cantaloupe growing, and they are about spent. Also, I had green beans in here, and I've got a ton of green beans. And those green bean plants, there's one straggler there. You can see it's kind of looking pretty bad. I've just been pulling those up as they get in bad shape. And I picked enough green beans to last me a good long while. So that is a cantaloupe, I think. Yeah, that's a cantaloupe, and it's still got some growing to do. Sugar baby bush watermelon, small one. There's a big one over there hiding in the blackberry, black-eyed peas. All of these are black-eyed peas that are growing. So they are a semi-vining type of plant. They spread out like they're going to vine, but you don't have to trellis them. Although, by the looks of this bed, a trellis might not have been a bad idea. I have some growing in 5-gallon buckets in the front yard, and they look much neater than these. But looking forward to getting some black-eyed peas. I want to show you one of my experiments and talk just a little bit about it. I saw this idea on the internet and decided I would experiment with it and see what I thought. The original idea was to put plastic bags, fill them with dirt, and plant stuff inside them and hang them suspended from a pole. So that's what I've done here. I planted lima beans here, and you can see these lima beans are doing just fine. And I also had planted a crookneck squash, and it did just fine too. It actually harvested squash out of it. The problem was the squash vine borers got to it before the vine was able to get to the ground and create another root system. And so once the main stem was chewed through by the vine borers, then the plant was dead. Based on a lot of suggestions from people in different Facebook groups and online, they said that this plastic was going to degrade too fast and fall apart, and my bags would end up on the ground. And so they said, you need a sturdier bag. So I got these reusable shopping bags and did the same thing with them. I had a patty pan squash in this one, and it did fine. And I actually harvested some fruit off of it. Same problem with this one though. Vine borers got it before it was able to establish another root system in the ground, and therefore once the main stem died, the plant was dead. I also planted a bag over here with a Desert King watermelon in it, and this was originally hanging from this pole. And the reason I used the reusable bags was the idea that they would be sturdier and they would not break and degrade by the sun. But look at this. That is the one that broke. Whereas these plastic bags are still hanging tough. And even with this one over here, you can see there's a tear in it right there. So all of these bags have been out here the same amount of time. Actually, the plastic bags have been out here probably 2 or 3 weeks longer than the reusable bags. They're the ones that are still holding up. So, lesson about that is these plastic bags are a little tougher than you might think. They can certainly last through a season. Now they could break any minute, but so far they're hanging tough. I've got them double bagged and they're hanging tough. And yes, they will grow food. You can grow food in them. I even have a watermelon growing there. I've got some more flowers there, so the potential for more fruit to come. However, would I do it again? Probably not. I've got enough space in my yard to grow plenty of stuff. I don't need a system like this. However, something like this might be good if you were very limited in your amount of space. Maybe if you lived in a very small yard or a subdivision, or in suburban urban area, or maybe if you only had a patio or if you had, if you were in an apartment with a balcony or something like that. That's a possibility. Of course, you can do the same thing with a pot, a 5-gallon bucket or a container, and probably much better. And don't have to have the concerns about, anything leaching, any chemicals leaching out of the plastic bags. But is it doable? Yes. Would I do it again? Probably not. I don't need it. But it is one option. Now, as we're walking toward my front yard, I want to show you what I call my annex. This is a extra section of my front yard. I have a very large front yard, and there's this section over to the side between my house and my neighbor's house, and it isn't really used for anything, and the soil's not very good in it, but it gets a lot of sun, probably the most sun of any area in my yard. So I decided to make a garden over here, and I planted these square hay bale planters. And this is one you can see, because I had some winter squash growing in here. And got a great harvest off of those, but then the squash vine borers started getting into it, and after I got all the fruit harvested off of it, I just tore them out. So you can see the actual bale, and it has broken down quite a bit. There were 4 bales in the configuration of a square, and in the middle filled it with dirt. And I still have green beans that are producing here. These are contender bush green beans, and I've gotten lots and lots of green beans. Got some pretty Cosmo flowers growing there. Another cantaloupe. We'll see if this cantaloupe is actually going to produce anything or not. And I also planted some Yukon Gold Irish potatoes in these hay bales and in the middle. So hopefully in about 60 days, those will be ready, and I will just bust this thing apart and pull out all the potatoes, and then I'm going to spread this hay bale out, and I'm actually going to make an in-ground garden bed here in the front yard. I talked to my neighbor yesterday, and he has a tractor with a tiller, and he's going to till it up for me, and I'm going to make a nice big in-ground garden bed to grow. I know I want to grow some corn in it next year. It's one thing I didn't grow this year, and probably a lot of other things too. But that is the square hay bale planter. That's what it looks like. But here's what it looks like when it is fully loaded with plants, vegetation. And in this one little square, I have so much growing, and it really has worked well. I have Desert King watermelons growing, and these we have already harvested and eaten probably 4 or 5 watermelons. And they make a really large watermelon that is yellow on the inside, and it is sweet. I don't know if I would grow that particular variety again. I chose it because it is drought resistant, and it's interesting because it's yellow. And it is a very sweet and a good tasting watermelon, but I think I prefer it's a very mild flavor, and I prefer a more robust flavor. But it's grown well in these planters. You can see I've got watermelons there, watermelons there, watermelons there. I'm still getting little baby watermelons popping out. So we have watermelons growing all over. But what else do I have growing here? Well, I have sweet potatoes growing, and those sweet potatoes are probably ready to be harvested, but I'm going to wait because I don't want to mess up all these field peas that are growing. These are zipper cream field peas, and they are so delicious. We have eaten them several times already, and they are delicious. So we eat them fresh, but you can also let them dry on the plant and harvest them and save them for the entire winter. So not only do we have fresh food growing, we're going to have food available through the winter as well. Don't even have to can them, you just dry them and keep them in a jar or in a baggie and they're good to go. But I also have watermelon growing here, sweet potatoes, I have some sweet bell peppers that are growing in this mix as well, and it's all getting along fine. Although it looks like a tangled mess, it's still doing just fine. And these zipper cream peas are really easy. They're much easier to harvest than green beans. They just pop out right there on the top and you just twist them off. The only thing is you have to shell them, or you don't have to shell green beans. In these buckets, some more sweet potatoes, and that's going to be really easy because when those are ready, I'll just dump the bucket out and get all the sweet potatoes. Black-eyed peas growing in these buckets. These are the same black-eyed peas that are growing in the back, but you can see that they're behaving much nicer in these buckets. No trellis, and they're just kind of growing up and doing their thing. I wouldn't say it's a pure bush bean type thing situation, but you can see a little bit of a vining thing, and they could probably climb a trellis pretty well if they wanted, but I don't need it. And these are the actual beans. They're the same kind of bean as the zipper cream peas, so you can see they will be really easy to harvest. They pop up right on top, and there they are. They're just so easy. These look really skinny. That's how they start out, but they will eventually fill out just like these and these zipper cream peas. So what starts out as a little tiny skinny bean will turn into a big long full bean like that. Those are growing in the buckets. Over here is another hay bale. This one looks a little more sparse than the two in the front because I also had winter squash growing in this. And once the winter squash was done, pulled it all out and to give everything else some more room. Another Desert King watermelon, more zipper cream peas, and also I've got some green beans growing in here. So you can see there's a green bean right there that's ready to be picked. And some flowers. Really happy with how this front annex garden has done. It's been a very nice thing. And another thing about it is it's right out here by the road, and people drive by on that road and they see it and they get curious, and I see people slowing down, looking at it, and they're like, what in the world is this fool doing out here? Sometimes I'm out here, I might be weeding, or I might be watering or whatever, and the car will pull up and they'll stop and they're like, what tell me about this garden. So it's given me a chance to meet some of my neighbors and talk to them about it, and they thought it's really neat, and that's also helped me make that connection with my neighbor down the road who has the tractor, and he's got a great in-ground garden growing, and he said he would help me till up in-ground garden bed here. So I'm excited about doing that. So that's a tour of the garden, and I apologize for making you wait so long to get an update on how things were growing in the garden. It got so busy so quick that and I just couldn't get everything done that I needed to get done and still make a video. But I'm making one now. I hope you enjoyed the tour. And now I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about. Part of the reason for my garden is, we've been through so much this last year with COVID-19. We've been through so much chaos over the last year, and we've seen, that when you go in, it was kind of eerie, and you go in a grocery store and you see that their shelves are empty. Not all the shelves, thank goodness we didn't have a complete lack of supplies, just certain things. But it makes you think, oh my gosh, what would we do if there wasn't food available in the stores? And so that's a part of, why I wanted to grow a garden. Do I think the world is going to come to an end and we're not going to have food? Not really. I mean, there's always a chance, and in the back of your mind, you kind of think about that. And if it happened, I would have food, or at least I would have some food. And beyond that even, I'll have the knowledge about how to grow food. So that's been a big part of why I've been doing more gardening. And as I've been doing, you think about how is it that people were able to survive 100 years ago, 200 years ago, before you could just go to the grocery store and buy all the food that you wanted. How did people make it? Well, they lived a lot different than we. They thought a lot differently than we. The acquisition of food was probably always very much at the forefront of their thought process. And they were growing gardens. The country was much more agriculturally based because food was like the most important thing. It's still one of the most important things in life. It's just that we take it for granted because it's so easy for us in America to come by it. And because of that, we've forgotten a lot about how to grow our own food. And if we ever got into a situation where we had to grow our own food, whoa, we'd be in a big mess because we don't know how to do it. Not only do we not know how to grow food, we don't know how to preserve food. We don't know how, even if you can grow a great, productive, high-yielding garden, what are you going to do in December when your garden is not growing? We say, well, I'll just go to the refrigerator. Well, food doesn't even last in the refrigerator for long, and not all food can be frozen. But what if you didn't have electricity? What if your electricity was sporadic and unreliable, so that maybe you had electricity for a month, then you didn't have electricity for 2 weeks, and then it came back on and you had electricity again? Well, by that time, all of your refrigerated and frozen food would be gone. And so there's a scripture that comes to my mind where Jesus said, I'm paraphrasing from memory here, off the top of my head, but he basically, it tells us, be prepared to give, to be a witness and to tell people the gospel, both in season and out of season. And the idea there is, regardless of what time of year it is, or regardless of what situation you're in, always be ready to give an account about your faith and what Jesus Christ means to you. Now, I'm a Christian. Not all of you may not be a Christian, and I don't mean to be preachy to you, but I'm just speaking from my own personal life experience here. But one of the things about it that makes me think about is how that's not just true when it comes to telling people about your beliefs, but it's true about all opportunities that we have in life. You have to be ready to take advantage of the opportunities you have when they come to you. In a gardening sense, something has just sort of clicked with me this year as I've been thinking about how people used to live off of the land. That doesn't mean that they were growing food. They weren't growing tomatoes year round. They were growing tomatoes during tomato season. They were growing corn during corn season and cabbage during cabbage season. And then in the winter months, when they couldn't get food to grow, they were growing cows and pigs. Those are things that can survive during the winter. And you can slaughter an animal when it's cold outside and you don't need refrigeration. So you can slaughter it and the meat won't go bad. You can store it in an outbuilding where, Mother Nature is basically your refrigerator. And then when springtime rolls around, and of course through the winter months, you can also be eating some of the things that you grew during the summer and preserved by pickling or fermentation, or you might have canned some things or dried some things, and those can be So all year round, and then when the warmer months come and you get your garden or your farm going, then you've got fresh foods available. So you have to eat what is available at that time. That is probably something that the human body was designed to do, but in our modern times, we haven't had to do it. You know, if it's December and I want to eat a fresh tomato, I just go to the grocery store and I get a fresh tomato. I'm able to do that because they grew that tomato in South America, where it is not winter but it's summer, and then they put that on a ship or a plane and they ship it all the way to America, and we're able to eat fresh food year round. And refrigeration and all of those kinds of things makes that possible. But that's a relatively new phenomena for people when it comes to food. So if you wanted to be able to be self-sufficient and live off the land and be sustainable, you have to go back to learning how to eat the food that's available when it's available. That means you probably eat a lot of eggs, because eggs are something that can be year-round, though you get more eggs during the warmer months than you do during the cold months. But eggs is also something that you don't have to refrigerate. You can keep eggs for a month, at least a month, out on the counter, as long as you just take care of them and eat them in within a month. So, you know, that's something you could eat regularly. And chickens is something that is a small animal, so you could harvest a chicken and not have, you could eat it all before you'd have to worry about refrigerating it. Then in the colder months, you could worry with your larger animals that need to be kept cold in order for them not to spoil. What does that have to do with you and me living in modern times? Again, it goes back to thinking about the opportunities you have. We are so spoiled in modern times. We want what we want, how we want it, when we want it. But that's not necessarily the way life works. And so we have to learn to enjoy the opportunities that we have when we have them. Take advantage of those opportunities. Learn how to identify when you have those opportunities. And maybe it's a job opportunity that you have, or it's an opportunity to spend time with your kids. You know, kids grow up so fast. And when we are young, we tend to be so driven and ambitious in our career, and we're going out there and we're trying to earn money and we're trying to chase our dreams. Meanwhile, a lot of people are ignoring their kids or overlooking them. And then the kids are all grown and they're out of the house and they're off being ambitious themselves. And then the parents all of a sudden realize that those 18, 19, 20 years went by so fast, and now their kids are gone and they missed the opportunity that they had when they had it. And you can look at that kind of a situation throughout your life. So what is it, what opportunity is it that you have right now? Do you recognize the opportunities that you have? Are you letting them pass by because you're not focused on that right now? Maybe God has brought that opportunity into your life for such a time as this, and you've got to take advantage of it while it's there, because it's a fleeting opportunity. It's something that's going to pass, and you may not have that in another month or in another season. So take advantage of the opportunity. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important that we walk closely with our God, because He is constantly revealing His plans to us. He's there trying to show us the way, especially if He knows that we want to follow Him, then He is trying to show us the way. But we've got to, hearing the voice of God is not something that necessarily comes naturally to the human being. There's a corruption of sin in our lives that separates us from God, and our natural inclination is to try to do things our way. We don't want to follow God's plan. We don't want to do what He wants us to do when He wants us to do it. We're like teenagers, Teenagers want to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and they're not very considerate of your thoughts and plans. And sometimes we are that way with God as well. And so we're not always listening to what God would have us to hear him say. So we have to practice it daily, through prayer, through reading the Bible, so that we train ourselves to be attentive to what the supernatural God of the universe would want us to know and want us to do. But once you begin to let that click, then it's amazing how you can start to see that God is showing you exactly where to take the next step, the next door that you need to go through. And so we have to train ourselves to be listening. Anyway, that's my thoughts for you today. And thank you again for coming and checking out my garden. I'm going to try really hard to do another video sooner rather than going so long without doing one. Even if it means that it's less video editing and more just raw footage like this video is today. But thank you so much for following me and my journey in the garden this year. And I hope that if you're joining me for the first time, I want to welcome you and invite you to click subscribe and click the like button, ring the bell in the garden video, and that way you will get all the updates about my videos as they come out. I like to do garden videos. I also like to share my weekly message from my services at my church. And so I hope if you are interested in knowing more about God and how you can hear his voice and know him and follow him, I invite you to check out my spirituality playlist, and you will be able to learn quite a bit from that as well. But thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you again soon.